What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and 2017 was an interesting year for the iPhone because it was the first time ever where we saw 3 new iPhones introduced at the same event. So we saw the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus, and then we also saw the iPhone 10, which was the first iPhone without a home button. But now we're in 2021, and aside from the budget iPhone SE here from 2020, every iPhone sold by Apple has that full screen display with no home button. But the thing is, some people still want a bigger phone with a home button, and that's where the iPhone 8 Plus comes into play. But is it even worth buying in 2021? And if you have one right now, should you upgrade ASAP, or will it last a couple more years? So we're going to answer all those questions and more in this video. So let's start with the design, because this is one of the defining factors for whether or not you will want to buy an iPhone 8 Plus in 2021. So the 8 Plus was the first iPhone to have a glass back and allow for wireless charging, but it still maintained the same big bezels that we saw the previous year with the iPhone 7 Plus. So you can see on the front side here, we have, of course, the bezels all around. We have our home button down here, which does have Touch ID, which we'll talk about in a moment. We also have the aluminum frame here. So we have not stainless steel, but aluminum. It still feels nice and premium. It has a good weight to it. It is on the heavier side. It weighs 202 grams, which is heavier than the 7 Plus and every iPhone to come after the 8 Plus as well, aside from the Pro Max models. But all around, you can see really nice design. Of course, we have the glass back and we have the dual camera setup right there as well. And we also have an IP67 rating for water and dust resistance. And you can kind of see one thing that isn't resistant are fingerprints. You'll notice all over this thing, there are fingerprints, and that of course comes with a glass back, which is kind of a con, but then again, most people at least should be rocking a case with this phone, so you probably won't have too many fingerprints unless you just don't wipe it down very often. Now, we cannot discuss the design without talking about that home button and the super fast and reliable Touch ID. Now, some people did prefer Touch ID over Face ID even before COVID started, but now that we're always wearing masks when we go out, that adds even more to it and just kind of makes unlocking your phone in a public place a whole lot easier. And you know, the fact that you can kind of be pulling it out of your pocket and it's already going to be unlocked by the time you pull it up to your face. Obviously, Face ID is fast as well, but Touch ID is definitely faster to get in the phone. And with the masks and everything right now, you can definitely make a case for, you know, more practicality with Touch ID versus Face ID. Now, as for the durability of this phone, the 8 Plus has held up actually pretty well. I never used the screen protector with this phone, which is not recommended. You should use a screen protector with all your phones, in my opinion. But you can see here that I didn't get too many scratches on the screen. I mean, I really don't have any deep scratches. There are some like hair scratches there, just some minor scratches all around, but you know, nothing major, no deep cuts or anything like that. Now, I did also drop the phone, as you can see over here on the bottom right hand side. That's the only time that I actually have anything to show for it. I dropped this phone a few times, but that's all I have to show for it. So it's a very durable phone. You can see some other scuffs right here as well. I think it's from the same drop, but overall a very, very durable phone in terms of the screen and also just the, you know, the frame and everything as well. And speaking of that display, we do have a 5.5 inch display with a 1080p display. It's exactly 1920 by 1080. So 1080p videos on YouTube will look great, and they also fit to size, which is awesome. We also get True Tone on the 8 Plus, and this was actually the first iPhone to get True Tone, so that's pretty cool. Now, the display itself is not anything that's gonna blow you away like the iPhone 10 did at the time with that OLED panel. It's solid, but it's an LCD display, so you're gonna get LCD display results. So watching videos, playing games, web browsing, all that's gonna be sufficient. And again, you're not gonna see super contrasty colors quite like you do on an OLED panel, or even like you see on the 10R with that Liquid Retina display, but the quality is perfectly fine. I mean, nobody's gonna complain about this display unless you're just used to a much better display. And even then, it shouldn't be a deal breaker for most people, like 98% of people. The 8 Plus also has a pressure sensitive screen, which means that we have 3D Touch. And 3D Touch is the feature that Apple replaced with haptic touch in 2019 with iOS 13, and it is much, much worse in my opinion. But the 8 Plus will always have a pressure sensitive screen, so if you long press, you know, on an icon or in multiple places throughout the OS, you're going to notice that it's much faster than haptic touch, which got introduced with iOS 13, like I said. So it's faster to bring, the quick action menu up, and it just feels so much better and less like a simple long press like it does on the phones these days, since they don't have those pressure sensitive screens. So I love that. That's one of the biggest pros, in my opinion, about the iPhone 8 Plus. Now, also on the front side of this iPhone 8 Plus is the front facing camera, which is a 7 megapixel f2.2 camera that can only shoot up to 1080p. So nothing that's going to blow you away, obviously, but then again, no front-facing camera has really blown me away personally until the iPhone 12 did this year, or in 2020. So I would not put too much stock into the front-facing camera, unless you just vlog with your iPhone a lot. In that case, you need to just go ahead and get the iPhone 11 or the iPhone 12, in my opinion. But if you don't vlog and constantly post to YouTube, then the 1080p front-facing camera, even with video, will be fine. I mean, it's not like you can't make FaceTime calls or anything like that. It's just not going to be that good of quality. But at the end of the day, most people are not going to care at all what you look like in terms of quality on FaceTime. But one of the bigger cons about the front-facing camera on the 8 Plus is that we don't get any of the fun features on this camera, like portrait mode or Animoji or Memoji or night mode. We don't get any of those features on the front-facing camera of the iPhone 8 Plus, which obviously those came later down the road, but still it's kind of boring because you can't do much with that front-facing camera there. But on the rear-facing camera, things do get better. So we have the dual 12 megapixel camera setup, one wide angle and one telephoto lens. And thanks to that telephoto lens, we get portrait mode with portrait lighting. And it actually works pretty well on both people and on objects. So the cutouts and the edges of people are not as precise as the phones that we've seen, nowadays, that we've seen after the 8 Plus, but it suffices. I mean, it gets the job done, and it actually makes photos look like they came from a newer phone than the iPhone 8 sometimes. So it's pretty impressive with portrait mode, and even not in portrait mode, just regular shots look fine as long as it's in good light. Now, one con is that if you start trying to take photos or videos in either low light or too bright of situations, you will notice that the dynamic range is just not great. So you have blown out skies a lot. And obviously this does not thrive in low light either. So in low light, you might see a lot more grain than you would on some of the newer phones, and just the quality overall will not be super impressive. And like I said, sometimes you'll see skies blown out and lights blown out just because of the dynamic range. But aside from that, we do have other features, like we have HDR, Auto HDR, we have True Tone Flash, we have OIS, and overall, like I said, the photo quality is fine. I mean, it's not something that's gonna take your breath away, like I mentioned about the front-facing camera, but it gets the job done just fine. And like I said, as long as you're in good lighting conditions, you're not really gonna be able to tell a big difference in the iPhone 8 Plus camera versus, the iPhone 10 even, or sometimes maybe even the iPhone 10R. So obviously still a good camera, just make sure that you are in good lighting situations the majority of time. But even then, most people that are gonna see these photos are not really gonna care and not really gonna be able to tell a huge difference. Now, as for the video, we can shoot 4K 60 FPS and the video actually looks pretty good, but we do not get stereo recording. So when you record a video and you hear it back, you're gonna notice that you just get a very flat mono sound, which is a little unfortunate. But then again, most people are not really going to care or hear about that. This is mainly just, nerd talk right now. But the video quality will be fine for most people who are not looking to have the best quality out there. And just like with still photos, the iPhone 8 Plus gets the job done, and you won't be able to tell a big difference in quality unless you're comparing it to something like the iPhone 11 or the iPhone 12, sometimes the iPhone 10R. And even then, like I said, the difference is going to be in the dynamic range and in extreme low light or high light settings. Now, the main reason that the iPhone 8 Plus does not quite have the camera quality as some of the newer iPhones, despite having the same 12 megapixel lens that the newer iPhones have, even the iPhone 12 still has a 12 megapixel lens. And the reason for that is because of the chipset inside and how Apple and how these phones handle computational photography. And the chip inside of the iPhone 8 Plus is going to be the A11 Bionic chip. And while it is a solid chip for performance, it just doesn't have as much of an impact on the photo and video quality like the newer phones do. But when it comes to actually using the phone on a daily basis, this thing performs just fine. Now, yes, it does feel a little bit sluggish compared to the newer phones, but unless you have an iPhone 11 or 12, you're not going to be able to have, any complaints about the 8 Plus. I mean, it handles games very well. I spent a whole day tweeting and checking my social media accounts, my email, web browsing, all of that with no issue. Everything was nice and smooth here on iOS 14.4, I believe I'm on. So really no major complaints about the performance on the 8 Plus at all here in 2021. Now, when it comes to battery life on the 8 Plus, it's just decent here in 2021. Now, when this phone was first introduced, it got great battery life for the time. But now that we're on our phones more than ever before, especially with the pandemic and everything, the 8 Plus likely will not make it through an entire day without charging at least one time, most likely 2 times for me personally. But in my battery test video, I did find it to get around 5.5 hours of battery life, which isn't the greatest, but then again, my 8 Plus is on 93% battery capacity. So, if you have a less worn battery than mine, you could get slightly better results, but still, I would not expect to make it through an entire day, unfortunately. Now, with all of that being said, should you still buy the iPhone 8 Plus in 2021? And if you have one now, should you consider upgrading this year? So first off, you cannot buy the iPhone 8 Plus new from Apple anymore. Now, you might be able to buy it refurbished, but I would not even go that route. I would just go straight to third-party vendors. I would look at places like eBay, Amazon, Facebook Marketplace, and I would be looking at either refurbished or preferably used but mint condition models. And looking at eBay, which is where I recommend buying used iPhones from, I made a whole video on everything to look for when buying a used iPhone. I bought, probably 35 different iPhones on eBay, never been scammed, anything like that. And I've always gotten exactly what I wanted. So you can check out that video. It is linked in the description below. But anyway, you could see that the iPhone 8 Plus on eBay is going anywhere from around $250 to $350 in mint condition. Now, you can find 128 and 256 gigabyte models for around the same price as the 64 gigabyte model. So I would 100% recommend going with either 128 or 256. Even if you don't think you're going to use all the storage, you might as well if they're going for around the same price on the used market out there. So yeah, 250 to 350. I think the iPhone 8 Plus is a solid buy, only if you want the old iPhone style design with a bigger screen and of course the home button here and that Touch ID. So this is the last, like I mentioned earlier, the last big iPhone with a home button. So if that's exactly what you want, it seems like a good deal to me here in 2021. However, if you can stretch your budget out just a little bit more to around $350 to $400, then I would recommend getting a used XR. I think it's a better value than the 8 Plus. Now you get a better camera, you get faster performance, and of course you have less bezel, and of course you have Face ID and you have that full screen display, which some people will not like, but I'm just saying this is a better value out there right now if you can stretch the budget a little bit. I did also make a full video on the XR in 2021, so you can check that out as well. It's up in the cards above and also in the description below. Now, if you currently have an iPhone 8 Plus, should you upgrade in 2021? And my answer to that would be no, probably not, at least not yet. Now, unless you just hate your phone and you complain about it every single day, then I think that you should wait until the new 2021 iPhones get released and then look at maybe buying the iPhone 11 or the iPhone 12, since they will get a discount after the new phones launch. That's always my strategy for finding the best value out there. The best bang for your buck is getting the previous generation when the new generations get announced, because they get a nice discount in both the new and the used markets. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that there could be an iPhone SE Plus coming at some point in 2021. So that's going to keep the older iPhone design with a home button, but bring better internals and likely a better camera as well. Now, this is just a rumor, but if it were to come out this year, it would be in the first half of 2021. So that's another reason you should just hold on to your 8 Plus, at least for now. And also, if you're wondering about how long the iPhone 8 Plus is going to last, I think that we're going to be getting iOS 15 later this year. And also, I think the iPhone 8 Plus will likely be supported until at least 2022 and maybe even 2023 with iOS 16 and iOS 17. So I think the 8 Plus will still last a few more years. If you just want to hold on to it and, get everything out of it, squeeze everything out of it, you definitely can. But yeah, guys, there you have it. That is the iPhone 8 Plus here in 2021. I think it's a good value. However, if you don't necessarily want the home button, if that's not like the biggest thing to you, then the iPhone XR might be a better buy. But, nonetheless, I would at least hold on for a few more months to see if that new iPhone SE Plus comes out. And of course, wait for the discounts when the new phones get released later this year as well. So there's a lot of variables, but hopefully, I answered the questions and hopefully you guys can make up your mind if you want to get rid of your phone, upgrade, or if you just want to buy one, maybe upgrading from maybe an iPhone 6, 6S, SE, something like that. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, make sure you guys subscribe for a lot more videos about the iPhone 8 Plus. I'll make another video in 2022 about it. I may make another video on this phone later in the year as well. So anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.